Way good. Last thing I want to do is I want to thank our players again, all of our current players and our past players. They've helped make this very, very special. I also want to thank our coaches and what they've done, and all of our staff for bringing me along with them and making this a very, very special point in my life. The last 13 years, the 6 years before it when Nick Saban brought me here were special years. And I'll forever be a Spartan. And I guess that's all I got now. Go Green.
Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Cole. Today we are going to be talking about Mark Dantonio abruptly retiring at Michigan State and what his tenure was like there and what this has all ultimately turned into, because Michigan State football obviously had some really good years back 2013 through 2015. And then as of recently, they've been struggling in the Big Ten. So I kind of wanted to talk about that. I didn't think him retiring was a surprise considering his age and the state of the program, honestly. And I really felt like he was probably close to being done considering everything that has happened there. And then he obviously cashed out, so that's a pretty good time to retire. So make sure you subscribe if you're new to the channel and follow me on Twitter for even more updates going on in the sports world. My Twitter is in the link in the bio, and let's get into this. Mark Dantonio has been the head coach at Michigan State since 2007, and the program was really not in that good of shape when he got there, and they hadn't had a 10-win season since 1999, and they needed a new direction. He coached Michigan State under Nick Saban from 1995 through 2000 as a defensive backs coach, but Nick did have that 10-win season, but he wasn't like as successful as he's been as Alabama at Michigan State, so it really wasn't a place known for winning, and Dantonio led the program of a stretch that was honestly the most successful in the school's history. He spent 13 seasons as the head coach. He had 3 Big Ten Conference championships. He was a 2-time Big Ten Coach of the Year. He had a 114-57 record, which is really good. He was the school's winningest coach. He had 6 10-win seasons, 6 bowl victories, which was the most ever by a Spartans coach. And obviously, he had 1 college football playoff appearance. Now, breaking down every single year at Michigan State for him, 2007, the team was eligible for a bowl game for the first time in 4 years, and they were led by Brian Hoyer, and actually, surprisingly enough, his backup was Nick Foles, but then he transferred to Arizona. 2008, the team was in the top 25. They went 9-4, but lost to Georgia in the Capital One Bowl, and they were led by Brian Hoyer, but his backup at that time was Kirk Cousins. Then in 2009, Kirk took over as the starter. They went 6-7. They were disappointing on and off the field, and they lost a bunch of their games that they let in, so that was pretty disappointing. But 2010 was better because the team started 3-0, but Mark Dantonio had a heart attack and he had a blood clot in his leg, so he missed 2 games. But the team still went 11-2 and they shared the Big Ten title. Then they lost their bowl game to Alabama in the Capital One Bowl. And then 2011, the team went 11-3, which was Kirk's last season, and Le'Veon Bell was awesome during the season. They won their division but lost in the Big Ten title game, but they actually won Mark his first bowl game at Michigan State versus Georgia in the Outback Bowl. Then in 2012, the team started out in the top 10, but fell because their offense was not very good and Le'Veon Bell couldn't carry them like they needed him to. But their defense, however, was pretty good, so they did go 7-6, however, and they did beat TCU in the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl, so that was a good way to end the season. Now, most remember Kirk Cousins and Le'Veon Bell at Michigan State, but they were not there at the peak of Michigan State. 2013 through 2015 was the peak of Michigan State. 2013 was their best team, despite losing Kirk Cousins and Le'Veon Bell, Connor Cook, and running back Jeremy Langford, and their great defense led them to a win in the Rose Bowl versus Stanford, and they had 13 wins, which was huge. 2014, they went 10-2, and they lost to Oregon early on and Ohio State later in the season. But you know what? Those were not bad losses at all because they both competed for the national championship. And then Michigan State made the Cotton Bowl and beat Baylor, so that was a huge success that season. And then 2015 was probably their most notable season. Obviously, they had that field goal game versus Ohio State where they beat Ohio State without Connor Cook. And then they had the block punt versus Michigan, and that team went 11-1. They made the college football playoff, ranked number 3 in the nation, but then they played Alabama, who won the title and lost 38-0. So it did end on a disappointing note, but they had some pretty crazy wins that season, and that was probably their most successful year. But 2016 was kind of the downfall of Michigan State. The team went 3-9. They were 1-8 in Big Ten play, and they had their worst record in the past 30 years. 2017, they beat Penn State and Michigan when they were both ranked number 7, and they finished 16 in the college football playoff bowl, so this was probably a bounce back year for them. And then they actually beat Washington State in the Holiday Bowl, so they finished 10-3. So I mean, like, even after that really bad year, kind of looked like, you know what, Michigan State, they're kind of here to stay. Dantonio knows what he's doing. But then the past 2 years are pretty notable because that's where they've really been struggling. They started out number 11 in the AP AP poll in 2018, but they were up and down all year and went 7-6 with a loss in the Red Box Bowl versus Oregon. And then obviously this past season, they were ranked number 125 in offense in 2018, but Mark only reshuffled his offensive staff and the team ranked number 18 after the first 2 wins, but they never recovered. They made dumb mistakes all year that cost them, and they went 6-6, but they did win their bowl game versus Wake Forest. So that, in a nutshell, is what Mark Dantonio's time at Michigan State was like. And this retiring, is pretty sudden. It's actually really bad timing because
Yesterday was National Signing Day.
he also just accepted a bunch of money. So it's not really that honorable because he waited until like very last day he could make all that money, and then he did. And then obviously he's in the middle of a lawsuit about recruiting violations.
Now, yesterday was National Signing Day.
Obviously not as impactful because of early signing period in December. So that kind of does soften the blow of this. Like I just previously mentioned, he recently picked up a $4.3 million bonus because he was the head coach by January 15th of 2020. And you know what? I mean, you can kind of say whatever you want about that. I mean, obviously that was in his contract. He earned that. He earned the right to accept that. And he didn't like retire like the day right after that. So I mean, like, you can make whatever you want out of that. And something that people are kind of speculating about is, this is the signing period time, but Dantonio said that Tuesday that he resets and evaluates the program each February. And he thought that after doing that this year, it was right for him to walk away right now. It's kind of an odd time to really reset and evaluate. Like, this is usually not the time to do that. And you probably should do that before this time period, considering, signing day and stuff like that. But, the team's offense was not very good right now under him. They were kind of behind the times, and it was probably just best for him to retire instead of finding new tricks to win. And maybe he just doesn't even want to coach anymore. Obviously, he has all that money now, so why wouldn't you retire anyway? Okay, so Mark's in his early 60s. I mean, I don't know. It kind of just depends on how you look at it. Maybe he comes back and starts doing commentary, but who knows? He wants to spend time, like he said, he wants to spend time with his wife and his kids after 13 seasons as head coach. Now, some incidents that have happened with his team. He had 4 players that were kicked off his team in 2017 after being accused of sexual assault. 2 separate incidents. And one day before his announcement, Michigan State recruiting director Curtis Blackwell did file an update and an ongoing lawsuit claiming Dantonio and the Spartans committed multiple NCAA recruiting violations, and Blackwell said Dantonio helped arrange jobs for multiple high-level recruits and took Blackwell on recruiting visits, which is against NCAA rules because Blackwell was not an on-field coach. But the school obviously was willing to defend Dantonio in court, and their athletic director said those allegations were completely false. And Tom Izzo, the basketball coach, supports him entirely as well. And he's basically the face of Michigan State. So, I mean, he has support of the university. Dantonio does. So, I mean, I'm not like taking that into account of this. But you know what? The team did go 7-6 the past 2 seasons. The program is not the same as it was in their best days. And the best days are not even ahead of them right now because of all the scandal, the rise of other schools around them. And they're just not recruiting as well. And Mark never really brought in coaches with fresh ideas and looked like he wanted to evolve. He just kind of shuffled around the coaches that are already there and kind of hopes of sparking something, but obviously that didn't work out. So the game kind of just honestly moved past him. I mean, Mark was not very innovative. He didn't embrace change that much, and he was pretty loyal to his coaches, and he didn't really try to keep up with the sport. And he thought some of his old-fashioned changes within would work, but it didn't. So he just said, you know what, I'm going to cash out and I'm out of here. And the team probably did know that he probably wasn't going to be lasting much longer as the head coach. It's not like he's that young, and there was no sign of this coming. I mean, I could kind of see it coming. Michigan State is a pretty tough place to win at right now because of Ohio State, because of Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, Wisconsin, and eventually Nebraska. So I don't know how well the next guy could do, but I do hope they hire Luke Fickell. That's the name I keep hearing. Luke is actually was in the same situation as Mark. He was the head coach at Cincinnati, Luke is currently the head coach at Cincinnati right now. So him becoming the next Michigan State head coach would be pretty ironic, since that's exactly how Dantonio ended up there. And Luke used to coach at Ohio State. He was their head coach for I think a season, but it didn't really work out that well, and then they hired Urban. But you know what? That was a great learning experience for him. He's done pretty good at UC. Like, he brought UC kind of back to the map. And usually if you're a Cincinnati head coach and you move on to a bigger program, it can work out pretty well. But you know what? This team's kind of in a tough situation right now. They just lost their 3-year starting quarterback. They lost key contributors to both sides of the ball and have one of the toughest schedules in the nation, and it's going to be difficult to win. Now, I'm not shocked by this. I thought Michigan State needed to make a change anyway because the sport is getting younger and he wasn't really adapting to the game like some of his colleagues in his conference or even the entire sport. And also all the controversy that hit the program after their glory years really put a damper on what they were kind of trying to do there. So it's just became a place that I didn't really see having success unless they made a change. And I still think it's a top 6 job in the Big Ten, but it will definitely take a step back. And I'm going to work on a video about what happened to Chip Kelly next and continue this series. I kind of wanted to do something that wasn't titled The Downfall, and instead try to do like the What Happened To series going forward. So keep a lookout for that, and click here for a video about my NFL predictions from the past season and see what I thought was going to happen before the season just concluded. And click next to that for another video about the downfall of Tennessee football. And thank you so much for watching, everyone. I will see you in the next upload and on Twitter.